Originality is the holy grail for all creatives, and achieving it is often a huge part of the creative process. More than that, originality is something that we praise in almost all aspects of our life. We worship those who seem to come up with original solutions to our problems. We celebrate companies who find original ways of approaching issues in our workplace and home. And most of all, we idolize those creatives and artists who find original ways to tell stories and express feelings that we can't find the words for. But there's an awkward problem with this way of thinking, and there's a question we need to ask. Is it actually possible to be original? I guess to try and answer this question, we need to understand what we mean when we use the word original, because it's one of those words that we all have our own definition for, and we need to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. Of course, there can be multiple ways of interpreting what is meant by originality, and we can go down that rabbit hole forever. So for the purpose of this video, I'll be taking original to mean having certain qualities that are special or new that enable something to stand apart from anything or anyone else. If you disagree with that definition, which it's certainly possible to do, then I implore you to keep watching, as I doubt your own understanding is far away and you can still gain something from this video. I hope so, anyway. Importantly, we need to make a distinction between original and unique, as they can often be confused for the same thing. To make this distinction clear, I'd like you to imagine a car. This car is covered in scratches. It is certainly unique in that it has a distinct pattern on it that no other car has. Its age is special only to this one car, and it has its own quirks in how it drives based on its lifespan. Maybe it pulls a little to the right. But it's not original. It's still a car that functions like any other car, fulfills the same purpose, and brings nothing new to the category of car. So it's important when we examine whether something is original or not, we understand that it has a sense of positive evolution to it. It progresses what has been done before it. It changes something fundamental about what it means to be a car. To continue talking about cars, an electric car has originality over the scratched one. It behaves differently to other cars. It is widely seen as a positive step for automobiles in general, and it required innovation based on skill to be achieved. That last point is something we'll touch on later. So the next obvious question is, why does this even matter? I'm sure there are some people out there thinking that originality is overrated or not something to worry about. Or maybe you have your own decision on whether you can or cannot be original. Well, those are great points. For some people, being original doesn't matter at all. And sometimes positive steps for some can be viewed differently by others. However, as I stated at the start of the video, being original is something that is almost universally praised in almost all circles in all societies around the world. So whatever this elusive quality is, as humans we certainly place an enormous amount of emphasis on achieving it. Therefore, it's important to understand what it is, how to achieve it, and whether it is possible to do so at all. More than that, there's something innate in us as people to deliver something new to our field, whether that's football or politics. We want to be responsible for finding something new and positive in the world. Creatives especially worry about achieving originality, as if it's the key to success due to the vast amount of weight that's placed on producing your own original style, story, or art. So back to the main question in this video, can we actually be original? The answer, as you can probably tell already, and from looking at the length of this video, is not simple. It's yes and no, and both, and neither, and somewhere in the middle. It's complicated. Let's take this video as an example of how complicated being original is. Are the words I'm using new? No, they're not. Is talking about originality original? Not at all. Am I the first person to make a video about it? No again. It's not looking very good for my own originality, so let's try and make it positive. Well, have I assembled all these words in an order that nobody else has? I would say it's highly likely. Pineapple. There, now it's original. Is the experience I have gained in my life to lead up to making this video unique? Well, I'm not aware of anyone else living my life, so yes. Am I the first person to use this specific example to demonstrate originality? I think so, yes, probably. So you can see, just from using this video as an example, how complicated answering the question of whether we can be original really is, and it's not quite as simple as saying yes or no. Mark Twain believed that there was no originality, and branded the bulk, the actual valuable material of all human utterances, is plagiarism. People like Twain believe that producing an original thought, free from all your biases, experiences, interests, culture, even your language, is basically impossible, and all we're doing is making poor imitations of what somebody else has done before, or making a sort of Frankenstein's monster out of all the things we've experienced. Maybe he has a point too. Think about every piece of media you consume, every book you've read or film you've watched. Did many of them leave you with new ideas or thoughts that have, at some point, influenced another conversation you've been involved in, or something you've created? My mother likes sewing and is very good at it, but Twain would say that she's not original. She didn't invent blankets, or sewing, or thread, or cushions. She watched sewing programs and read sewing books, so what has she done that's original? Harsh, but you can see his logic. He's arguing that it's not new. Even the things that influence us aren't original to Twain. Do you think they came to the creator fully formed and ready to go? No, of course not. Game of Thrones, for example, was inspired by Lord of the Rings, which was inspired by Anglo-Saxon and Norse mythology, which was inspired by stories of their ancestors, and so on and so forth. But does that mean that Game of Thrones is not original? Does being inspired by others and borrowing elements from previous work completely invalidate all the unique combinations that you've produced yourself through all that hard work? I would say no. Fine, then Game of Thrones and my mum's sewing are original. End of story, end of video, we can be original and there's nothing more we need to do than point to the cushion on the sofa. We've solved that debate once and for all. It's probably not that simple, is it? So what about the other side? What about the people who disagree with Twain and think that we can be original? Well, we've touched on it already. Originality isn't always about creating a new genre or blowing someone's mind. It can be as simple as approaching a problem from a different angle, or using our own unique connection of experience to produce a thought from a novel perspective. We don't have to reinvent the wheel in order to have originality. Simply crafting our own work out of the material we have at hand gets us a lot of the way there. Let's go back to our cars to understand this better. Our electric car is not an original concept in its parts, as there have been electric motors and cars and batteries and wiring before somebody put them all together. But the assembly and the technical know-how to combine them all makes the sum of their parts original to most people. The point here is that originality is more about the application of our skills and experience to something that exists already and trying to visualize, articulate, or communicate that in a way that hasn't been done before. Simple. So all those Instagrammers who add their black and white filters are original, and all the amateur writers who lift words from their favorite authors and change a few sentences are original too, right? Well, no. So where do we draw this line between originality, inspired by, and straight up copying? Why isn't Chelsea's Instagram filter original, but our electric car is? Why would Twain attack my mother's cushions, but she would say that they've never been made like that before? Well, that's to do with our final point. A key part of the earlier definition was that the product or thought should be new. And by new, I mean new to both the audience and the speaker. If you cite Twain to your coworkers and they think you're amazing, well, you're not, because you know you've copied that. They just think you are. The opposite is true too. If you think of an amazing touchscreen phone, well, you're going to realize quite quickly that Apple exists and your idea is far from new to anyone except yourself. So crucially, it needs to be new for you and your audience. That's the trick. J.K. Rowling didn't think of schools or magic or witches or flying broomsticks first, not by a long shot. But a combination of all these things with her literary abilities to tell engaging stories and avoid repeating ideas meant that she is widely considered to be creative and original. Nobody had done that before, for most of us. She knew it, and everybody who read the books knew it too. Another great example is The Lion King, which is widely praised and seen as original. But its story is heavily drawn from the Bible, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and the African lion, while its narrative arc offers little in the way of subverting expectations to anyone vaguely familiar with film structures. But what makes it original is the excellent voice acting, the beautiful animation style, the reworking of key elements of its inspirations, and the development of its characters. It's the skill of the writers, actors, and all the crew involved that take these unoriginal elements and turn them into something new. Nobody had seen an animated retelling of Hamlet portrayed by lions before, and that made it original. The idea of blankets and sewing is not new, but making a patchwork quilt from fabric from Sierra Leone, Vietnam, Japan, and the UK has a very high chance of not having been done before. Congratulations, Mum, you're original. So let's try and answer that question again. Can we be original? Yes and no is the most unsatisfying answer, but it's the most honest. Ultimately, we have to admit that everything we do and say has been influenced by what we've consumed and experienced in our lives, and therefore originality in its purest form is essentially impossible to attain. Once we admit that, I think we can gain a measure of freedom, a lowering of anxiety about drawing on our inspirations, and that frees us to play around with those ideas and create unique combinations that could be considered by others and ourselves as original. At the end of the day, originality is still something we should strive for, but don't be ashamed to be influenced and inspired by the life around you, the art you love, and the people you admire. Embrace the different elements and try and produce something that hasn't been done before. And just make sure that you're not creating cheap copies and you are actually putting effort into placing your own spin on something. It's why in previous videos I've encouraged you to get out and about, to read lots of different things, to do thorough research and discover new information. And with all of that at your back, you might find that you can be as original as the best. It's still a maybe though. Pineapple.